Welcome in, Bears fans, to this episode of Bare Bones. This episode is going to be a little different. As you notice, I am by myself today. Danny could not make it; had to do the real gig. So unfortunately, it's just you're stuck with me. It is what it is. Before we get into some of the Bear specific topics from coming up for the Lions and reflecting on that Bills game, there's some news that I want to talk about. So first off, Kevin Warren broke today that Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren is amongst the finalists for the Chicago Bears' vacant president and CEO job. It's noted that he was interviewed at least twice at Hallis Hall in this entire process. And he's got a really interesting story, actually. He was struck by a car and forced into traction and a body cast for many months. Doctors told Warren that it was unlikely that he would ever be able to fulfill his dreams of playing sports, let alone walk again. And a doctor ended up telling Kevin about aquatic rehab exercises. Maybe it's only hope for recovery. Since there was not easily accessible pool in Kevin's neighborhood, Kevin's family used the money they had from the insurance settlement received following the car accident to build a pool in their backyard. And Warren was able to get back to playing and play college basketball, which I think is pretty darn cool. He became the commissioner of the Big Ten in 2020 after 20 years of working with the NFL, Rams, Lions, Vikings, and had to deal with COVID, a bunch of other stuff, but was able to do some pretty cool things while he was there, like help create a 7-year, $8 billion media rights deal that incorporates Fox, NBC, and CBS. And he actually, like I said before, was involved with the Vikings. When he arrived there, the Vikings were 31st in revenue, and when he left, they were 7th, which is a pretty big jump. He was pretty integral also in building that new stadium, which, as Bear fans know, looks like hopefully the Bears are actually going to Arlington Heights. And as of right now, I mean, I know I've been concerned about that build, what that would look like, and ultimately how that would go. But considering how US Bank Stadium is considered to be one of the best stadiums currently in the NFL, and Soldier Field is one of the worst, it'll be nice to have someone who was a big part of building a stadium successfully. And also another thing I personally like is that he's an outside guy. There's no big family or franchise ties before. That's something that the Bears have always been kind of stuck with. Just bringing people in that share a similar last name, that are part of the family, or did something with the organization before. So it'll be nice to have an outside perspective. Like, there's nothing set in stone. It's just announced that he is interviewed and is one of the candidates. The Bears released a statement stating, "We have not set a timeline for announcing Ted Phillips' successor. Our search team has cast a wide net, spoke to many outstanding candidates, and looks forward to introducing our next president and CEO at the process's conclusion." So, yep, nothing's set in stone quite yet. But if currently, in terms of some of the other people you're hearing about, Cliff Stein's another name that's floating out there. I would be big on Warren. Some people that I really trust, who know more about this than I do, are big Warren supporters. So that's absolutely something I'd be looking forward to. And yes, let's be real. What is the CEO going to do? What's the president going to do? They're not changing the X's and O's. They're not drafting people, but it'll be nice to have someone at the top above, Eberflus, above polls, helping with the non-football decisions, who does have a little bit of at least some sports background. Another bit of news that is going to impact the Bears. Derek Carr won't be starting for the Raiders over the last 2 weeks, as the Raiders want to take as they say, look at their young players, aka Jarrett Stidham. They just don't want to deal with Carr anymore. They don't want Carr getting hurt. They're going to look to trade him. They're going to release him. If he gets hurt, they owe him a lot of money. If he gets hurt, he's going to be hard, if not impossible, to trade. As far as my understanding, some of the higher ups in Raiders land are over the Carr experience. And it makes sense. I mean, he was drafted, I think, in 2014. That's 8 years of not a lot of being able to produce. I'm sure, just a change of scenery will be good for him. It'll be good for the Raiders. But what does that mean for the Raiders? Is it a Tom Brady destination? Is it a draft destination? If it's draft in order to get your next quarterback, now all of a sudden, are they a team that could trade up with the Bears, right? At number 9, that's not a super big trade back. It's definitely one that you want a decent amount back for, though, if you are trading back from number 2 or even possibly number 1 back to number 9. And then, of course, you start to think about Devontae Adams, right? Devontae got there. He went there to the Raiders specifically because of Derek Carr and also to be closer to family. Obviously, he was able to do that, be closer to family. But Derek Carr, his buddy, his college teammate, is going to be gone. So is that something that maybe the Bears can get involved with? Now, keep in mind, he's on the older side in his 30s. He's got a big contract. The contract's not as big of a deal considering how much cap space the Bears have. I think it's going to be tough for the Bears to spend as how much they need to spend anyway. But is that something you look in? So, for example, do you trade the number 2 pick, move back to number 9 for Devontae, and what else do you get? Because, I mean, personally, for me, I'm not trading just for Devontae. I'm not trading just for a future 5th or a 5th this year. The value of the 2nd pick compared to the 9th pick has the same value as roughly the 12th pick. So you have to ask yourself if you would trade the 12th pick just straight up for Devontae Adams, because that's essentially the equivalent of what that trade out is. But then when you do factor in the age and you factor in the contracts, Bears should be able to get more. But that's all I got on some of those topics. So let's take a quick peek at the Bills game. So we're going to hit some of those same topics that we do normally. So knee-jerk reaction. My knee-jerk reaction to that game is I'm not sure how I feel about Luke Getsy right now. Bears continue to follow the run-pass archetype, which can be very frustrating. Bears rank 4th in lowest early down, 1st and 2nd down pass rate. So basically, they're almost never throwing the ball on 1st and 2nd down. You can see that on the field. You don't need stats to prove that, but it's pretty obvious. And it's hurting the Bears, right? Because when you run the ball and you have an unsuccessful run on 1st down, you run it and maybe get low to moderate success on 2nd down. Now all of a sudden you're looking at 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 6s, and that's much harder to convert. And that's if you're lucky. That's if you didn't have a penalty. That's if you were able to gain yards on those 1st and 2nd down runs, and that's tough long term. Another stat I want to highlight is this one here. Grab this from Arjun Menon. Hopefully I didn't butcher his name. At Arjun Menon 100. You can see where the Bears are way to the right of that graph. And if you're not watching this live, make sure you tune in live every Thursday, 5 p.m. If you're listening on the podcast, though, the Bears have the tallest bar on this chart all the way to the right. And what this chart is looking at is the likelihood to run on 2nd and 10 after a complete pass. Long story short, they are the most likely team, over 50%, to run on 2nd and 10 after they have an incomplete pass, if they happen to pass. Another thing, too, if you're watching this, the darkness of the bar is the success rate of that run. It's a pretty pale bar. So they're not completing, that pass on 1st down. And then when they run on 2nd down, it's not deemed that successful. That is a huge issue for the development of Justin Fields and this offense. Now, why is that happening? Is it a Luke Getsy thing specifically, right? We know that they're coming off of that Shanahan tree. We're looking at it right now with the 49ers. We're seeing that they're successful, though, with Brock Purdy and pretty much any quarterback that they slide in there. And they're very run heavy, but they have the horses, they have the offensive line to be able to do that. And even when Brock Purdy does pass, they are trusting Brock Purdy to pass. So there's a lot of things that have to go right in order for you to be a team like that. Obviously, the Packers, where Luke Getsy came from, also have that Shanahan tree. Helps when you have one of the best, if not the best, quarterback that's played the game. We've seen what happens when the quarterback falls off. The Packers have not been super successful this year. They've been better over the last couple of weeks, but again, not super successful. So this will also connect a little bit what I'm looking ahead with in this Lions game, but can we open it up a little bit? Now, if you want to play devil's advocate, you can talk about how the offensive line is scary in terms of letting Justin sit back there and throw. He's going to get hit. We've seen that. We've seen that the wide receivers are not good. They do not get open, especially when you've lost your top ones. When you lose Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool's been out, and even when he has been in there, it hasn't been great. Dante Pettis now on the injury report with an ankle issue, I believe it is. It's tough to be able to trust the throw when your offensive line receivers aren't great and Justin's still coming in his own as a passer. He's been a lot better and he needs to get a lot more credit than the national media is giving him, but that can definitely be tough. So to be perfectly honest, something brutally honest I took from that game, I don't know what we're doing. I don't on offense. I mean, if we're not going to let Justin throw, how important are these reps? If you look, Justin had 23 pass attempts in that game. This was more than only Tyler Huntley, Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, Brock Purdy, and Sam Darnold. Now, Sam Darnold, not exactly, who you're going to hold up there on the pedestal of quarterbacks you want to have throw less, have as your quarterback. Tyler Huntley is just doing the best he can right now, subbing in for Lamar. And if you notice, I listed Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke. They're on the same team. Carson Wentz had 16 passes. Taylor Heineke had 18. They split reps, and they still barely, Justin barely outpaced them. Now, you could say weather is a factor. Josh Allen only threw 26 times in that game, so only 3 more passes than Justin. But keep in mind, the Bills were leading at the end of that game. They didn't have to throw. Also, they were running all over the Bears. Like, literally, there was that one run play where I think might have been Cook. I don't even remember. He was basically untouched. He could have walked into the end zone from 30 yards out. It was absolutely insane. So, yes, you can use weather as a factor as a part of that, but it's not the whole story. So for me, I do not understand what we're necessarily doing. So, we saw, right, and we'll look at this when we talk about the injury report, but Justin came up a little lame after that one hit to the shoulder he had, I believe, in the second quarter. He got stepped on and took some brutal hits near the end of that game when they finally decided, hey, we're down, game's almost over, we need to start throwing it. That's a scary thing. And so if you're not going to let him throw throughout the game, and you're going to have him take these brutal hits, and you're going to have him keep be in these situations that are in a season that doesn't matter, when honestly most Bears fans want you to lose anyway, I do not get what we're doing. I'd rather go out swinging and have a 3 and out because we threw 3 times than run, pass, and lead to a 3 down anyway. So let's just try it. Let's try some different things. Something I found humorous, bringing back Khalil Herbert after his injury and only having him rush 6 times for 7 yards, 2 receptions, and -4 yards. I was a pretty big proponent. I didn't understand the need for him to come back, period. I thought Darrington Evans was doing fine. If you look at the numbers, they're the same. Honestly, maybe if they weren't better, with Darrington Evans leading the way as the second back. Just let Herbert rehab fully. Let him come back 100% healthy next year. We don't know what's happening with David Montgomery. Could he be back? Absolutely. But, there's also a pretty long list of viable running backs that are hitting free agency this year. He may not be back. Maybe the Bears strike out and they don't get a running back at all. I just don't understand the need to rush Herbert back at all, especially when you're going to get that production. So clearly he was not fully ready. Again, 6 rushes for 7 yards. That's trash. I just find it funny. It makes no sense to me, especially with the regime that as a whole has been a little more, I think, conservative when it comes to injuries. You heard Tevin Jenkins even say that he thought about playing this week. So clearly, it's up to some of the players, but it doesn't make sense to me. And something else that doesn't make sense to me are Concussed Corner. So this is something from the last game that just the decision so odd that the decision maker must be concussed. Justin Fields uncorks a beautiful deep ball to Velus Jones. 44 yards. Quarter ends. Huge play. Justin can throw. Velus is alive. He's on this roster. And then what do the Bears do? 3 rushes in a row for 3, 5, and -1 yards. And then finally they threw it on 4th down to Ryan Griffin, who initially got a first, but it was challenged, and then the Bears turned the ball over on downs. It just destroys all momentum. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not saying you have to throw it every single time, because obviously that's what this whole section, these last couple pieces have been about throwing the ball more. No, you still have to run the ball. And especially with Justin, he is a weapon with his legs. So you need to use him that way. But when you let Montgomery go for 3, I think it was Herbert for 5, and then Montgomery for a -1, you're losing all momentum you possibly had in that scenario. So even if you run on the first play, that's fine. Throw it on, 2nd and 7. Throw a dang slant. I don't know the last time I saw Justin throw a slant. I don't know if that's a Getsy thing, if that speaks to Justin's current comfort level, if it speaks to the receivers, whatever the case may be, that part is frustrating to me. So it makes no sense to have a play that big and then just straight up lose all momentum. And then on top of it, once you run it 3 times and it's finally fourth down, you finally throw it, you have a route that doesn't even go past the sticks. And that could be a Ryan Griffin issue. I'm not in the meeting room. I do not know if that was drawn up to run that way. I don't know if Ryan Griffin ran it too short, but to have that route, whatever the reason behind it, not be past the 1st down marker is insane to me. It makes absolutely no sense. And it was a big play in that game. Not necessarily like it's a huge deal if the Bears are winning or losing this game, but it's about the context of it. So when this matters next year and you're trying to win some games, when it matters the year after that, and hopefully you're pushing to become a contender, those are the decisions that don't make sense to me. And I would like to see more growth, because we've seen it from Justin, as definitely as a runner, We're seeing it in smaller doses from Justin as a passer. We're seeing it from Cole Kmet on and off. Kmet's fallen off, of course, a little bit too these last couple of weeks. But we've seen it from Kmet. We've seen it from Jalen Johnson. We've seen it from Kyler Gordon. I don't know that I've seen Luke Getsy grow enough, and that bothers me. So right now at this point, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to look at what's going on in the training room. All right, we have our training room roundup. This is where we're going to just chat a little bit about what's going on in the Bears training room. So one of the things first, though, I want to do is we're going to talk actually a bit about the Justin Fields play, where he came up a little lame. Now, keep in mind on this play, this didn't necessarily change a ton in the game, but we definitely saw Justin be a little more tentative to pull the ball, and it seemed like there were less quarterback runs afterwards. So with this play, we can see Justin running to the right here at the bottom of the screen, and actually a pretty good block from Schofield ends up blocking his guy into Justin, and Justin simply is there just trying to protect himself. Lowers the shoulder a little bit. You can see kind of the wiggle there in the head. You can see it a little better from this view, actually. So again, just takes a step, designed run, decent block, and right here, you see he reaches for that left shoulder, a little bit of that injured walk that we've all done at some point. And that's one of my things that connects to earlier. If we are going to have Justin play, and I want to see Justin play, I want him to get reps, I want him to get better. We have to protect him, and B, we have to get more out of it. This also goes back to where's the health of that shoulder. Now, nobody's 100% healthy in the NFL. No one ever is, especially at this point in time in the year. Is the juice worth the squeeze, though? So clearly that shoulder, not 100%, and definitely took a dive after that. You throw in the play near the end of the game where he gets stepped on his foot. There's just a lot of miles being added to him, whether it's on his legs with the runs, whether it's the hits that are happening. I just implore Bears training staff, the coaches, GM, etc. Let's make sure we're getting Justin out of the season as healthy as possible. And sometimes you have to protect the player from themselves. So because Justin's going to want to play. You saw it at Ohio State. He got it through injuries. You're seeing it in the NFL. He's doing everything he can to play. Let's make sure that we're making decisions for the wrong reasons. That's all I'm going to say. So in terms of the injury report, Andrew Brown, defensive tackle, full participant. Who cares? So let's just talk about the ones that really, really matter here. Some that do not, the ones who aren't participating. Interesting that Shatir Carter didn't participate today. He just popped up. When you have a DNP this late on a Thursday, it doesn't look great. So that's going to hurt the Bears' offensive line depth. Cody Whitehair was a full participant. That's pretty big. I really thought that he was going to be someone they might be ramping down for the year, whether it was to move on from him or just try to protect him for next year. But he looked slow in that game, even before he got hurt. He clearly has not fully recovered from that injury a couple, before that gave him that one injury IR stint, and he needs more time. So I really am surprised that he was a full participant today. But unless something crazy happens between now and Friday, he should be good to go for that offensive line. Speaking of offensive line, Tevin Jenkins, also a full participant, and he has been the last 2 days. As I mentioned earlier, he actually considered playing last week. Didn't happen. He should be good to go for this game as well. Dante Pettis, again, as I mentioned earlier, ankle issue that on Wednesday where he got hurt. DNP on a Thursday after that, not a good sign, especially for a receiver like him. A little bit of a quicker guy, needs to make those cuts. That is something that he's going to be out. I would be very surprised if he played. Equanimeous St. Brown, concussion, limited participant. That's a great sign. We've seen a couple of times, whether it's with Bears or some of their opponents, where guys have had limited participation on a Friday after they had a DNP on a Thursday, or even sometimes in a rare occasion, did not participate on a Friday, and they're playing it on that Sunday. So that limited participation with a concussion, to me, unless there's some dramatic change in symptoms between now to Friday and then Friday to Sunday, Equanimeous St. Brown's playing. So what does that mean in terms of change of symptoms? So it's what you would think, headaches, light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, nausea, If any of that stuff were to pop up and increase or change with activity, so he's in a drill and all of a sudden he's saying, "Yeah, I got my headaches back," yeah, that's when you get shut back down again. But if those things do not happen, you should be good to go. One of the people that there's a lot of questions on, Chase Claypool. I'm gonna say right now, I thought Chase was gonna play this week, and I still do. The limited participation helps. The DMP was a little scary on that Wednesday, but being able to come back today and practice was big. From what it sounded like he talked about, you heard, I think it was with Mark Grody, he did a little bit of an interview, and he even talked about how the rehab was going well. He thought he might be able to play in that Bills game, but didn't end up happening. Friday will be big. If he is a full, obviously at that rate, he'll be playing. If he's limited, I'll give him like a 75% chance of playing. If he can play, that's huge for Justin, because at this point in a dome on turf, Justin should be able to tear it up. Chase should be able to tear it up. And that's a game where maybe they can get on the same page and really use that as a springboard into the final week and then ultimately next year. Some of these other guys, the other Sterling Weatherford didn't participate, special teamer, hurts their linebacker depth. I mean, they're already a little thin at linebacker. So that's not fantastic, but not the biggest thing in the world. So if you look at the Lions real quick here, the ones that really matter, I think it's going to be Frank Ragnow, right? Their starting center. That foot's been something he's been dealing with on and off all year. And him not participating twice in a row is not a good sign there. Deshaun Elliott, safety, same thing. Not a great sign there, especially shoulder for a safety. That's tough to deal with. Kirby Joseph is their rookie free safety, limited participant with the back. Friday will be big. Back's one of those, we saw with Tevin Jenkins. Back's one of those tricky things where you could feel great one day or feel like you're doing good, and then all of a sudden one play happens and you get a flare up and you're like, nah, I'm done. So that's going to be one to keep an eye on there as well. And then Josh Reynolds. He was a full participant after an illness. Jason Cabina, full participant after an illness. Keep an eye on those only because what it means for the rest of the team. If they had this illness earlier in the week, is there a chance there's a bug going around the locker room? Do we all of a sudden hear 2 or 3 guys are out because of this illness? Only reason I bring that up. But for the most part, that shows that the Lions are going to be pretty healthy, full force. Yeah, another guy that did end up on there, Jamal Williams, he had an ankle issue. He's not on here at all. So that Lions run game should be exactly where what it's been all year, which has been pretty solid. And now moving on to our preview of this Lions game specifically, what you need to know. So if we take a look back at the last time these teams met, the Bears had 408 total yards compared to 323 from the Lions. If I told you that, you'd probably say that the Bears won that game. But as we know, Justin had a pretty crushing pick six to his former teammate, Jeff Okudah. But a few plays later, he had that long rushing touchdown, which to try to negate that mistake. Ultimately, the Lions scored 21 points in the fourth quarter. And ultimately, the Lions won that game. Now, talk about moral victories and things like that. It's always tough. I'm not a big moral victories guy in sports. More often than not, a game like that, when you're winning against a Lions team that was clearly an issue at that point. Actually, it was kind of weird. After that game, the Lions took back off again. It was kind of like the Bears set them right a little bit. But when you have a situation like that, that game left kind of a bad taste in your mouth. Now, I mean, looking where we're at, Bears having a chance to get the number 2 pick, if not the number 1 pick, you're not going to cry over, losses like that. If you're going to look at it and be like, great, that got us the number, the pick we wanted. But it's also about how you lost, and that was a bad loss. Now, talking about bad losses, the Lions lost to the Panthers last week, 23-37. And the reason I bring that up is because there's a couple of things that really stood out that I think we need to look at in terms of how this game is going to look. So the Lions allowed 320 yards on the ground. Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard just really couldn't be stopped. Foreman had 21 carries for 165 yards, and Hubbard had 126 yards on only 12 carries. The Carolina runners averaged 4.21 yards after contact on their 43 rushing attempts. I say all that because with being indoors, with that turf field, the fast turf, one could say, I think we can really see Justin have another game. That it's a game that can really help push him closer to breaking that record, the record that I know that he's eyeing at a little bit. And then also Dave Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, another week under his legs. Hopefully he's feeling a little healthier. They can really have a game. Now, can you Can you win with a pure rushing attack? I mean, we saw that with the Panthers. They obviously did it. The Panthers are also, they don't care kind of what they're doing right now, win or lose. They're just going ham. I'm not saying that the Bears are gonna win this week with that, but you should be able to see a better Justin game than we saw last week, and even a little bit from compared to the Eagles game too. Another aspect thing to bring up: Panthers scored on 7 of their 10 possessions. That's pretty solid by the Panthers, pretty bad by the Lions. And even with that, Goff didn't really have an efficient day. I mean, he threw 3 touchdowns for 355 yards, but it took 42 attempts to do so, and it was on 25 completions. So that passing attack was a little tempered. As a unit, Detroit's offensive line had one of its worst outings of the season. They gave up 13 total quarterback pressures. Most was Evan Brown with 5. Penei Sewell even had 2. He's been a stalwart there. So, and Carolina's pass rush is just nice. Brian Burns, everything like that. So, don't take that as me saying the Bears are going to be able to do anything like that. The Bears basically don't have a pass rush. I mean, it might as well just not even have players on the field with how bad they've been this year at getting to the quarterback. It's been really, really bad. To put that into context, the Bears currently have 18 sacks. That's tied for the franchise lowest back in 2003. That's really rough. But I mean, if there's any time that we might be able to get a sack here or there, maybe a couple pressures, it seems like this might be the game, especially coming off of what the Lions just put out there. Flipping to the other side of the ball, Lions rookie defenders really struggled in their game. Kirby Joseph missed 3 tackles, and Aiden Hutchinson was pretty much a non-factor against the run. Against the Panthers, Lions defenders recorded just 5 total quarterback pressures, tied for 3rd fewest pressures amongst defenders in Week 16. Aiden Hutchinson had 2, Ifeatu had 2, and James Houston had 1. They were the only defenders who registered pressures. So if that continues, that just adds to the, okay, maybe this is another big game for Justin, where he can put up some numbers, he can look real good, and he can take a step. At least that's my hope. All that being said, the Bears are lacking teeth on this defense and have little to no offensive firepower if Justin basically doesn't do it all. The Lions are the more explosive offense right now. Detroit ranks 6th in offensive DVOA, while Chicago defense ranks 32nd, literally last in defensive DVOA. We've seen some cool things out of Kyler Gordon recently, Jalen Jones, Jaquan Brisker, but there just isn't enough there. As previously mentioned, Detroit's rushing defense is not good. They currently rank 26th defensive rush DVOA, and somehow their pass defense is worse at 28th defensive DVOA. Now, it doesn't help that the Bears rank 26th in EPA per play, 26th in success rate, and 30th in dropback EPA in the second half of games. If you want a silver lining, they rank 10th in rushing EPA in the second half. So there's that. In the first half of games, it's a little better. The Bears rank 14th in EPA per play, 24th in success rate, still not good, and 13th in dropback EPA. So they're coming out solid. Then teams adjust. And I've seen this floating around the Twitterverse and other things where it's like, oh, it's Eberflus and Getsy getting on the tank bus. They're realizing, oh, we're too close in these games. Let's change our play calling. That's not it. Coaches are trying to win games. Players are trying to win games. It's just that defenses are going into the half and they're saying, hey, here are the things that are happening that the Bears are doing, and they're adjusting it. This is the second time the Lions are going to see Justin. I wouldn't be surprised if, the first half even there was a little less success right away than they have been. Because when you're a team like the Eagles, when you're a team like the Bills, this team that sees the Bears, this is the first time seeing them, there is that adjustment period. It's hard to practice for a guy like Justin Fields. We saw that, I think it was the Eagles game where they said Gardner Minshew was scout team quarterback trying to beat Justin. And, I obviously most people got a laugh out of that because it's like, okay, that's not even close. And then you see that speed on the field and you hear that all the time. Every single week you are hearing at least one defender from the opponent saying Justin is real. That speed is real. His elusiveness is real. And even some of them talking about his passing, how his path, the army that he has. So a lot of these defenses don't understand who and what Justin is until they see it in person. But you see it in person in the first half. You have a lot of smart brains in the box, in the locker rooms. They're going to change. So really what I want to see out of these next games, and you could guess this based on what I started the show with, I want to see Justin throw more. It's as simple as that. I want to first, hey, maybe you get a deep pass. You hit Kmet up the seam for 32 yards. Throw it again right away. right? Like do like immediately. Then you can run it on second down if it's an incomplete pass. That's fine. Teams have that all the time. There are other teams, and yes, offensive lines and other teams are better. Wide receivers and other teams are better. I get it. But there are other teams who they get a penalty and it's on first down. It's 1st and 15. They throw the ball and it's incomplete, and now it's 2nd and 10, and it's not a death sentence. It should be getting closer to the point where if something you can take a shot like that and it not be the end of the world, that you don't need to run it on first and second down in order to try to set up a 3rd and 2. Try to get a chunk and then another chunk. And I want more passes on first and second down. I don't know that it'll happen, but that's what I would like to happen. All right, one more quick break here, and then we'll end up wrapping the show up. All right, we with our over unders. So I just grabbed a couple that I thought were interesting. Amon-Ra St. Brown receiving yards. Currently, you can get that for 79.5. I'm going to take the over. If you remember that last Lions game, the entire first half, the Bears basically just didn't know that Amon-Ra was on the team and left him open constantly. It made no sense. Now that might be different. Now all of a sudden, maybe they read the scouting report and Al Williams is like, "Oh, that guy's the dude. We need a guard." But with how the defense currently is, now you're losing Eddie Jackson. You don't have Jalen Johnson, as you don't have a Roquan Smith. You don't have Jack Sanborn. This defense is not what it was. It's been better. We've seen some highlights, and I said that earlier. We've seen them do some pretty impressive stuff. AJ Brown was held relatively in check when they played the Eagles. Stephon Diggs, and some of this might be weather, but Stephon Diggs was a non-factor in that Bills game until a couple throws later. But I would take the over on that 79.5 still, because this defense, as I said earlier, just lacks teeth. Justin Fields rushing yards 70.5. I'm going to take the over. Again, indoors, fast turf. He's hit the over every week in rushing since week 3 and until that Bills game. So if you're going to try to throw a parlay together, you're going to try to make some easy money, I think the over for Justin on 70.5, even though that number keeps creeping up, he keeps hitting it. Jameson Williams touchdowns, 0.5. I'm begrudgingly taking the over. This just, to me, is a game that screams disappointing touchdown as a Bears fan. And if you were going to give a disappointing touchdown up to someone, the Jameson Williams, who might be terrorizing you for the next decade, as I think Jameson Williams is going to be a fantastic player. I have him on a couple fantasy teams that I've dynasty ones that I stashed him with the hopes that he is going to end up being a dude. He fell further than he should because of that ACL tear, and with another, it just fits that he'd be someone who would score on the Bears. David Montgomery rushing yards 65. I can see why you wouldn't do this, but I'm going to take the under on this. In his last 3 games, he's hit 62, 53, and 61 yards. And Herbert, again, should be a step quicker, should be a little easier, taking some of those yards away from Monty. I know I gave you all those stats about how trash the Lions are in terms of their rushing defense. So again, I would understand if you want to go the other way and bet on that, and it would make total sense. It's probably the smart decision. But in terms of the Monty trend right now, it's hard for him to break that 65 right now. But again, it would make total sense. Jeff Okudah interceptions, 0.5. I'm going to take the under. I think Justin's going to challenge him. He's not the kind of guy where he's going to do it just for the sake of doing it. But he's also not the guy who's going to shy away. So Okudah picked him off last time, and I think Justin's going to want to ball out on his low bro, you can say. And so he's still going to throw at him. And I think Justin's going to operate in a way, though, still to protect the ball. And overall, Justin's been pretty good at protecting the ball. We haven't seen a lot of terrible interceptions, a lot of fumbles that we saw early in the year and definitely into last year. So it's a little harder to expect him to turn the ball over with how he's been playing. Game predictions. So the Lions are a 6-point favorite against the Bears. I'm going to take the Bears. They're consistently a team that backdoor covers. They're consistently a team that keeps things close. They play really hard. This defense does sneak up on you, and this offense can generate explosive plays mainly through the run, but they'll keep it close. But I wouldn't pick them to just win straight up. I think right now, as we talked about, the Lions team is more explosive. Um, the Lions defense is bleh, but so is the Bears. So it's like you could almost wash those two matchups. So then it becomes about the quarterback. And while the Bears have the better quarterback, the Lions have the better support for their quarterback. Just with the Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift. The offensive lines for the Lions struggled last week, but definitely more consistent across the board than the Bears is right now. When you have a hope, maybe Frank Ragnow will be back. I'm not sure on that. I wouldn't expect him to be, but maybe Penei Sewell. I mean, you just have better bodies on that line. The Bears line's not good. You have some hope. You still have Tevin Jenkins has been great, but this will be his first game back as there's some rust. You have Braxton Jones is better than anyone would think for a draft pick of his status. But again, it's just you have more proven players on that Lions offensive line, and so therefore the support for your quarterback is ultimately better for the Lions. And that's the thing too, actually. And Jared Goff, I mean, even though he had a rough week last week, and I know Danny and I talked about this on the last podcast, but I would have put Goff in for the Pro Bowl over Kirk Cousins. I think Goff's been playing better, and Kirk Cousins has all of the help in the world from his offensive line, and he got Justin Jefferson. He's arguably the best receiver in the league right now. At a minimum, he's a top 3, depending on what your cup of tea is. So with all that being said, no. Anyway, Jared Goff has been doing significantly better than people give him credit for. Obviously, I know the Lions are a favorite. I like to do it too when you're doing your mock drafts and trying to snag their first 2 first round picks if they were to trade up with. I'm not 100% sure that's the case. I think they do like Jared Goff more than people think they do. If I were a GM, and I'm not, no one's asking me to be GM of any team anytime soon, I'd be getting my quarterback. I think, though, at some point, you reach your Jared Goff ceiling, the wheels fall off, and you realize, we can't win with this. Some of the other games that are interesting, at least for me, Cardinals at Falcons. Reason being for Cardinals, I want them to win. I want them to creep away a little bit from potentially sneaking up on the Bears too much and getting that draft pick, and also maybe fall down a couple pegs as someone you could trade with. Right now, I believe they're 4th if you look at Tankathon in terms of where they'd be picking. So if the Cardinals could win this game, that would be fantastic. The Falcons are favored by 3.5 points. Oh man, the Falcons also aren't good. Colt McCoy should be back for the Cardinals. You still have DeAndre Hopkins. You have a JJ Watt that's going to retire. Maybe he comes out motivated and can get a couple big plays here to finish out these last couple weeks. I'll take the Cardinals over the Falcons right now. Falcons are a bit of a mess, especially after they've transitioned away from Marcus Mariota. Jaguars at Texans. Jaguars favored by 4.5 points. This game's important for obvious reasons. If the Texans can win this game and the Bears can lose out, the Bears have the first overall pick, which would be nuts. But Trevor Lawrence has been balling in the second half of the season. They did kind of the opposite of what the Bears did this offseason. Bears did a lot of selling of pieces. The Jaguars did a lot of expensive deals to try to surround Trevor Lawrence with some tools. And there's some decent ones there. I mean, they're overpaid, but they're decent. You have your Zay Jones of the world and, Christian Kirks of the world. So 4.5 points is a decent amount of points, but I would still take that over the Texans currently. The one I have my eye on for the Texans is the Colts game in that final game of the season. Because there's actually a weird conspiracy that could go on there where, in theory, now, and follow me with this, if the Colts lost to the Texans, right, Texans fall out of the first, and Texans are a team that could take a quarterback. Now, the Colts, they get a win, whatever, they move. Now, they have an opportunity to trade with a team like the Bears to get the quarterback they want. Because if the Colts, let's say Ballard, and who knows who's actually making the decisions there, it seems like Irsay is kind of taking Ballard's decision-making away a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see. Now, the Bears will be happy to trade that first-round pick, and the Colts get the player that they want. Number one, they get the quarterback that they want, versus right now, if the Texans were to lose, keep the first-round pick, the Texans take the quarterback they want, and now, yes, maybe the Colts luck out, and they could still trade up with the Bears at number 2 and get the quarterback they wanted, because maybe they wanted Young, but the Texans took Stroud for the sake of argument. But if not, maybe they wanted the other. So it's interesting. The Colts could, if they were very confident that they could give the Bears a trade package they'd want, they could really help control that a little bit. But again, as I said earlier, players don't want to lose, coaches don't want to lose, so it'd be a little tough to puppeteer that from that thought process. Just a fun conspiracy theory. Vikings at Packers. Packers favored by 3.5. This one's big just because depending on what happens with a couple of these games over not just this game but across the league, changes what the Vikings are playing for or not playing for. I want the Vikings to have all of their starters and play full out in that final week. Give the Bears, everything they can. I'll take the Vikings in this. 3.5 is not a lot of points, and I just don't trust the Packers. I can't say I don't really trust Kirk Cousins, but I trust the weapons around Kirk more than I currently trust what Aaron Rodgers can do and what that defense can do. That Packers defense has been suspect. It just still isn't good. 49ers at Raiders. 49ers are favored by 10 points. A lot of points there. Raiders, obviously, as we talked about earlier, they are going to be sitting Derek Carr. They're playing Jarrett Stidham. Another team that could now be in the quarterback market. So, if the Raiders were to lose a couple more games, maybe they can slowly eke up. So now that 9th pick maybe becomes a little bit more digestible of a trade back option. So that's why I'm interested in how this game turns out. 10 points is a lot, but the 49ers can surprisingly score in bunches. They can control games, and it doesn't matter what quarterback is back there. They just score. So I am hesitantly, I wouldn't actually bet on this one just because that's a lot. But like if someone put a gun to my head, what am I taking? I'll take 49ers, which again, not confident in that. And we'll wrap it up here. A Coccyx and Bull story, bold prediction section. I think Chase Claypool plays, which is bold in and of itself. But I'll take it a step further and say that he gets his first touchdown with the Bears on a 30-plus yard reception. A nice bomb, maybe a little fly route, post corner, and catches it right in the corner of the end zone. On defense, the Bears continue their solid play. Gordon doesn't get another interception this week, but he does have one near interception and a fumble recovery. He's really coming to his own. It's been really exciting to see. He's got a lot of flack the first half of the season, if not 3/4 of the season. And yes, there were some times where it didn't look fantastic, but he's a rookie, learning two positions, and it's really nice to see him doing what he's doing and have some of the haters, you can say, kind of shut up a little bit. Maybe let these guys grow instead of just expecting them to come in and be amazing immediately. So patience is a virtue. It's been a tough season to be patient. And I kind of just want to fast forward to the end of the season. But we got 2 games left. So let's just hope that we see some steps from Justin. We see some steps from this offense to actually allow Justin to continue to grow and not just, get decked constantly at the end of games because he has to just sit in the back of the pocket and chuck deep passes because you're down by 8+ points. And let's hope that a couple of these players, maybe some chemistry can develop with Chase Claypool. We can see Komet come back a little bit. He's fallen off just a touch. And that we can continue to see some good games from some of these offensive line pieces that should be here next year. Tevin Jenkins, Braxton Jones, individuals like that. But that's all we got for this episode of Bare Bones. Bit of a different one. Sorry that you had to listen to my voice this entire time. Hopefully, next time Danny should be back. And we'll give you a preview for the final game of the season at that point. But bear down, Chicago.